It happened 3 years ago during the summer after my sophomore year of college. At that time, I was living with my parents in a pretty average suburban neighborhood in Pennsylvania. Our house sat at the very end of a cul-de-sac, bordered on one side by a small stretch of woods. Back then I had the basement room. It was my little escape from everything dark, quiet, and separate from the rest of the house. The only downside was that it had those half-height basement windows that were ground level on the outside. In other words, if someone walked right up to the side of the house, their feet would be almost in line with my face whenever I was lying in bed. I never thought much of it, though. It wasn't like people were walking around our backyard. The only time I noticed movement out those windows was when squirrels or raccoons darted by. But one night, around 2:30 a.m., I was on my computer with the lights off when I caught something out of the corner of my eye. Movement, so deliberate movement. I turned my head, expecting to see the shadow of a tree branch or maybe a raccoon. What I saw instead was a man's face, pressed right up against the glass. At first, my brain didn't process it as real. His skin looked pale under the moonlight, his eyes wide open. He didn't flinch when I turned toward him. He just stared. For a few seconds, I froze. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't make my body move. The only light in my room was the faint glow from my monitor, so he could definitely see me sitting there. Then slowly, I watched his mouth curl into a smile. I bolted from my chair, sprinted upstairs, and practically screamed for my dad. By the time he came downstairs with a baseball bat and went outside, the man was gone. No footprints, no sound of someone running away, just silence. We called the cops, of course, but there wasn't much they could do. They searched the yard, the woods, even drove around the neighborhood, but they didn't find anyone. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured that face, those eyes glued to mine through the glass. The next day, my dad nailed wooden planks over my basement windows. It made the room pitch black, but I honestly felt safer like that. For about a week, nothing happened. I started to convince myself that maybe it had been some drunk neighbor messing around, or maybe I just hallucinated. Then one night around 1 a.m., I was upstairs in the kitchen getting water. Our back deck has sliding glass doors with no blinds, something my mom always said we should fix, but we never got around to. I didn't even notice him at first, but when I closed the fridge and turned toward the sliding door, my heart dropped. He was standing on the deck. The same man. Same pale face, same wide eyes, just staring in at me. This time I could see more detail. He was tall, maybe 6'3", with messy dark hair and this dirty gray hoodie. He didn't move, didn't try the door, didn't knock. He just stood there. I shouted for my dad again, but when he came running, the deck was empty. The cops came out a second time. They searched the yard and the woods again, but nothing. They told us to keep the doors locked and the lights on outside. They suggested it might be a homeless guy living in the woods. For the next few nights, I was on edge. I slept upstairs on the couch because I didn't want to be in the basement anymore. Every little noise outside made me jump. Then, on the fourth night, something happened that still makes my skin crawl to this day. I woke up around 4 a.m. to the sound of tapping. Not knocking, but a soft, rhythmic tapping. At first, I thought it was coming from the living room window. But when I sat up, I realized it was coming from the back door. I looked over. There he was again. Except this time, he wasn't just standing there. He was crouched low, his face practically pressed against the glass. And he was tapping one single finger against the door. Tap, tap, tap. And he was smiling. Not just a small smile either. It was wide, unnatural, like his mouth was stretched too far. I don't know how long I sat frozen, staring at him, but eventually, I forced myself to grab my phone and call. 911, I didn't even shout. For my parents this time. I didn't want to take my eyes off him. As I was on the phone with the dispatcher, his smile slowly faded. He stood up to his full height, gave me one last blank stare, and then walked off the deck into the woods. The police showed up 10 minutes later, but he was gone again. That was the last night I ever saw him. We installed cameras around the house, motion sensor lights, the whole 9 yards. But he never came back. Still, to this day, I have no idea who he was, what he wanted, or why he chose our house. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm walking through my apartment and I glance at the windows, I get this sinking feeling in my chest, like one day I'll look over, and that pale face will be there again.